The gunshot echoed across the plains of Nebraska Territory, 1867, as Cassandra Moore steadied her trembling hand, the revolver still smoking from the shot she'd fired into the air to scare off the coyote threatening her horse. This wasn't how she'd imagined her journey west would unfold, stranded with a lame horse miles from the nearest town, her meager possessions packed in 2 weathered suitcases, and the sun beginning its slow descent toward the horizon. Cassandra had been running for 3 months now, ever since leaving Boston behind. The scandal that had driven her away still burned in her memory, false accusations of theft from the wealthy family who had employed her as a governess, all because she'd refused the inappropriate advances of the master of the house. With her reputation in tatters and nowhere to go, she had gathered what little savings she had and headed west, hoping to outrun her past and start anew. Now, as she surveyed the vast expanse around her, she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. The nearest settlement, according to her map, was a place called Sweetwater Creek, still several miles away. With her horse favoring its right front leg, she had no choice but to lead the animal slowly along the dusty trail, hoping to reach town before nightfall. The sun had nearly disappeared when Cassandra spotted a thin curl of smoke in the distance. Relief flooded through her as she quickened her pace, pulling her reluctant mount behind her. As she crested a small hill, she saw a modest homestead nestled in a small valley, a wooden cabin with a barn nearby, a corral housing several horses, and a small vegetable garden to one side. She hesitated. Approaching a stranger's home as dusk settled wasn't ideal, but the alternative, spending the night alone on the open plains, seemed far worse. Gathering her courage, Cassandra led her horse down the slope toward the cabin. Before she could reach the gate, the cabin door swung open. A tall man stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, his stance wary. Even in the fading light, she could make out his broad shoulders beneath a worn denim shirt, a weathered face beneath the brim of his cowboy hat, and eyes that surveyed her with cautious suspicion. "That's far enough, madam," he called out, his voice deep and rough like gravel. "State your business." Cassandra stopped, keeping her hands visible. "My name is Cassandra Moore. My horse has gone lame, and I'm trying to reach Sweetwater Creek. I was hoping I might trouble you for some water, and perhaps directions." The man studied her for a long moment, before lowering his rifle slightly. "You're a fair piece from Sweetwater. Won't make it before dark." He glanced at her horse, then back at her face. "Where are you coming from, Miss Moore?" "Boston, most recently," she answered honestly. "I'm seeking employment out west." Something in his expression shifted, a flicker of curiosity, perhaps, or disbelief. "Boston's a mighty long way from Nebraska Territory." He stepped down from the porch, moving closer to inspect her horse. "This animal needs rest. You won't make town tonight." Cassandra's heart sank. "I understand. Perhaps you could point me to a suitable place to camp, then?" The man's weathered face frowned as he glanced at the darkening sky. "Ain't safe for a woman alone out here after dark." He seemed to wage an internal debate before coming to a decision. "You can stable your horse in my barn for the night. I've got a room my daughter uses when she's not sharing with me. It's yours till morning." Relief and caution warred within her. "That's very kind, mister." Kip Zimmerman." He turned and whistled sharply toward the house. A moment later, a small figure appeared in the doorway. "Elizabeth, come help our guest with her horse." The child who emerged from the cabin couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. She had her father's strong jawline and dark brown hair, though hers was plaited into 2 neat braids. She wore a simple calico dress that had seen better days, and her keen eyes studied Cassandra with undisguised curiosity. "Is she staying with us, Pa?" the girl asked, her voice carrying clearly across the yard. "Just for the night, Lizzie. Her horse needs rest." Kip turned back to Cassandra. "My daughter will show you where to stable your mount. I'll bring your bags to the house." As Cassandra approached the girl, she was struck by the solemn expression on the child's face. Elizabeth didn't smile, but she didn't seem unwelcoming either, just watchful, as though taking Cassandra's measure. "Hello, Elizabeth. I'm Cassandra Moore. Thank you for helping me." The girl nodded. "Everyone calls me Lizzie." She turned and started walking toward the barn. "This way, madam. We've got an empty stall next to Storm." As they walked, Cassandra couldn't help noticing the confident way the child moved. the practical knowledge she displayed as she helped unpack and care for the lame horse. This was no pampered child, but a girl being raised to survive in a harsh environment. "Is it just you and your father here?" Cassandra asked gently as they spread fresh hay in the stall. Lizzie nodded, her hands never ceasing their work. "Ma died when I was 4. Fever took her and the baby." The matter-of-fact way the child delivered this devastating news made Cassandra's heart ache. "I'm very sorry to hear that, Lizzie." The girl shrugged. "Pa says we managed just fine, the two of us." But something in her voice suggested otherwise. By the time they returned to the cabin, Kip had lit several lamps and was stoking a fire in the stone hearth. The interior was simple, but clean. A main room that served as kitchen, dining, and living area, with 2 doors leading to what Cassandra presumed were bedrooms. The furnishings were sparse but functional. A wooden table with 4 chairs, a rocking chair near the hearth, a few shelves holding books and household items. "Wash up for supper, Lizzie," Kip instructed, setting a pot of stew over the fire. To Cassandra he added, "It's nothing fancy, but it'll fill your belly." "I'm grateful for your hospitality, Mr. Zimmerman," Cassandra replied, setting her bonnet on a peg by the door. "Perhaps I might help with the meal?" He raised an eyebrow, but nodded toward a cabinet. "Plates are there, if you're offering." As Cassandra set the table, she observed the interactions between father and daughter. Kip was not an effusive man, but there was tenderness in the way he brushed a strand of hair from Lizzie's face. Checked that she'd washed her hands properly. The child clearly adored her father, standing close to him as he prepared their meal, following his instructions without complaint. Yet there was something missing in this household, a warmth that went beyond the physical comfort of the fire, the kind that only a complete family could provide. Cassandra had seen it before in her years as a governess. Children raised by single parents often displayed a particular kind of hunger that had nothing to do with food. Supper was a simple affair, venison stew with cornbread and preserved peaches. Cassandra complimented the meal sincerely, which seemed to please Kip, though he merely nodded in acknowledgement. "What takes you to Sweetwater Creek, Miss Moore?" he asked as they ate. Cassandra considered how much to reveal. "I'm seeking a fresh start. I worked as a governess back east, but circumstances made it necessary for me to look elsewhere for employment." "Ain't much call for governesses in these parts," Kip observed. "Most folks here can't afford such luxuries, even if they wanted them." "I'm willing to turn my hand to whatever honest work is available," she replied. "I can cook, clean, sew, and I've some knowledge of bookkeeping and basic medicine." Lizzie, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. "Can you teach reading and figures? Pa tries, but he's away working cattle most days." "Elizabeth," Kip said, his tone carrying a warning. "Miss Moore isn't looking to stay in these parts." "Actually, I'm quite skilled at teaching," Cassandra said, smiling at the girl. "I'd be happy to help you with your studies during my stay, if your father permits it." Kip studied her for a long moment. "One night hardly seems worth the trouble." "It's no trouble," Cassandra assured him. "I enjoy teaching." After supper, while Kip went to check on the horses, Cassandra helped Lizzie wash the dishes. The girl was full of questions about Boston, about Cassandra's life as a governess, about the books she had read and the places she had seen. "Have you ever been to the ocean, Miss Moore?" Lizzie asked, carefully drying a plate. "Many times. I grew up near the coast," Cassandra replied. "The water stretches as far as you can see, like the prairie but blue and always moving." Lizzie's eyes widened. "I'd like to see that someday." "Perhaps you will," Cassandra said, smiling at the child's wonder. When Kip returned, he found them seated at the table. Cassandra helping Lizzie with a simple reading lesson, using one of the few books in the house, a worn copy of Robinson Crusoe. He watched from the doorway for a moment, his expression unreadable, before clearing his throat to announce his presence. "Time for bed, Lizzie. You can share my room tonight." The girl looked reluctant, but didn't argue. "Yes, Pa." She turned to Cassandra. "Thank you for the lesson, Miss Moore." "You're very welcome, Lizzie. You're a quick learner." After the child had gone to bed, Kip offered Cassandra a cup of coffee, which she accepted gratefully. They sat in awkward silence for a few minutes before he spoke. "She's smart, my Lizzie. Gets that from her mother." His voice softened when he mentioned his late wife. "Jenny always had her nose in a book when she could get one." "It can be difficult." "Raising a child alone," Cassandra ventured, especially a daughter. Kip's jaw tightened. We manage? Of course. I didn't mean to imply otherwise. Cassandra sipped her coffee. She's a credit to you, Mr. Zimmerman. This seemed to thaw him slightly. Kip, he corrected. Nobody calls me Mr. Zimmerman except the banker in town, and that's only when he's fixing to deny me credit. Cassandra smiled. Kip, then, and you may call me Cassandra. They talked a while longer about practical matters, the weather, the condition of her horse, the distance to Sweetwater Creek. Kip explained that he ran cattle on the surrounding grassland, working mostly alone since his nearest neighbor was 5 miles away. It's a hard life, he acknowledged, but an honest one. Lizzie will inherit whatever I build here. She's fortunate to have a father who thinks of her future, Cassandra said sincerely. When the fire began to die down, Kip showed her to the small bedroom that would be hers for the night. It was sparsely furnished, a narrow bed, a chest for clothing, and a small table with a basin for washing. But the linens were clean, and after her long journey, Cassandra was grateful for the simple comfort. Thank you for your kindness, she said, as Kip prepared to leave her to her rest. He paused in the doorway. Folks help each other out here. It's how we survive. With that, he closed the door, leaving Cassandra alone with her thoughts. As she lay in bed that night, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the prairie, Cassandra reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. A month ago, she never would have imagined herself here, in a rancher's cabin in Nebraska Territory, miles from civilization as she knew it. Yet, there was something appealing about the simplicity of this life, the honesty of it. And despite his gruff exterior, there was a decency to Kip Zimmerman that she found herself admiring. But Sweetwater Creek awaited her, and whatever opportunities it might hold. This was merely a temporary shelter, she reminded herself, as sleep finally claimed her. Morning brought the aroma of coffee and the sound of quiet activity in the main room. Cassandra dressed quickly and emerged to find Lizzie setting the table while Kip tended to something sizzling in a cast-iron skillet. Good morning, she greeted them, smoothing her skirt. I hope I haven't overslept. Sun's barely up, Kip replied without turning from his cooking. Plenty of time for breakfast before you head to town. Lizzie smiled shyly. Pa's making Johnny cakes. They're the best when he makes them. The simple breakfast was indeed delicious, Johnny cakes drizzled with honey, accompanied by strips of salt pork and strong coffee. As they ate, Kip explained that he needed to ride out to check on a section of fence that had been damaged in a recent storm. I can't spare the time to take you into Sweetwater today, he told Cassandra, his tone apologetic. But your horse still needs rest. If you're agreeable, Lizzie can show you the way tomorrow. Cassandra hesitated. I wouldn't want to impose further. It's not an imposition if I'm offering, Kip said firmly. Besides, Lizzie needs supplies from town anyway. You'd be doing me a favor, keeping an eye on her on the journey. The logic was sound, and Cassandra found herself nodding in agreement. Thank you. I'd be happy to help. After breakfast, Kip rode out, leaving Cassandra and Lizzie alone at the homestead. The girl seemed eager to show Cassandra around, proudly pointing out the vegetable garden she helped tend, the chicken coop where she collected eggs each morning, and the creek that provided their water. Pa built the cabin himself, Lizzie explained as they walked. Before that, we lived in a sod house, but it leaked something terrible when it rained. As the day progressed, Cassandra found herself drawn into the rhythm of life at the Zimmerman homestead. She helped Lizzie with her chores, feeding the chickens, weeding the garden, preparing a midday meal. In the afternoon, they sat in the shade of a cottonwood tree, and Cassandra continued the reading lesson they had begun the previous evening. You explain things clearer than Pa does, Lizzie confided. He gets impatient when I don't understand right away. Teaching requires patience, Cassandra replied. Your father has many skills, but perhaps that isn't one of them. Lizzie nodded solemnly. He misses Ma something awful, even after all this time. I think that's why he gets cross sometimes. Cassandra's heart ached for the child. It's difficult to lose someone you love, but I'm sure he's very proud of you. By the time Kip returned in the late afternoon, Cassandra had prepared a simple supper of beans, bacon, and the remaining Johnny cakes from breakfast. He seemed surprised to find the meal waiting, his weathered face softening momentarily at the domestic scene that greeted him. You didn't have to cook, he said, as he washed up at the basin by the door. I wanted to contribute something in return for your hospitality, Cassandra replied. Besides, Lizzie was an excellent helper. Throughout the meal, Lizzie chattered excitedly about her day with Cassandra, the lessons they had worked on, the stories Cassandra had shared about life in the East, the new stitch Cassandra had taught her for mending. Kip listened more than he spoke, but Cassandra caught him watching her with an intensity that made her both nervous and oddly pleased. There was a question in his gaze that she couldn't quite decipher. After Lizzie had gone to bed, Kip invited Cassandra to join him on the porch. The night was clear. Stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. In the distance, coyotes called to one another, their eerie songs carrying across the open land. "Lizzie seems taken with you," Kip said after a while, breaking the comfortable silence. "She's a remarkable child," Cassandra replied honestly, "bright and eager to learn." Kip nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "She needs more than I can give her. A girl ought to have a woman to teach her certain things." "You're doing an admirable job raising her on your own," Cassandra assured him. He turned to face her then, his expression serious in the faint light from the cabin window. "Why are you really heading west, Cassandra? A woman like you, educated, refined, doesn't usually choose a place like Sweetwater Creek." The direct question caught her off guard. For a moment, she considered offering the same vague explanation she had given before, but something in Kip's steady gaze compelled honesty. "I was falsely accused of theft by my former employer," she admitted. "He was inappropriate with me, and when I rejected his advances, he claimed I had stolen his wife's jewelry. It was his word against mine, and in Boston society, that was no contest at all." Kip's jaw tightened. A man who'd treat a woman that way deserves a beating, at the very least. "Violence wouldn't have solved anything," Cassandra said softly. "I chose to leave instead, to find a place where my past wouldn't matter." "And you think Sweetwater is that place?" There was skepticism in his voice. "I don't know," she confessed, "but I have to try somewhere, and I've come too far to turn back now." Kip was silent for a long moment. "Sweetwater's a rough town. Not many respectable employment opportunities for a single woman." "I'm aware of the challenges," Cassandra replied, lifting her chin slightly. "But I'm more resourceful than I might appear, Mr. Zimmerman." A faint smile touched his lips. "I don't doubt that, Miss Moore." The next morning, Kip surprised Cassandra by announcing that he would accompany them to town. "Got some business with the mercantile anyway," he explained, not meeting her eyes. The journey to Sweetwater Creek took most of the morning, with Cassandra riding Lizzie's pony, while the girl sat in front of her father on his sturdy bay gelding. Cassandra's own horse followed behind, its leg much improved but still not fit for riding. As they traveled, Kip pointed out landmarks and shared stories about the area, how he had come west after the war, staked his claim, built his ranch from nothing. He spoke with quiet pride about his accomplishments, but was quick to credit his late wife for her role in their success. "Jenny was the brave one," he told Cassandra. "I might have given up that first winter if not for her." Lizzie drank in these stories about her mother, clearly treasuring each detail. It struck Cassandra that the child was starved for such memories, for connections to the woman she had lost so young. Sweetwater Creek proved to be exactly what Kip had described, a rough frontier town, consisting of one main street lined with wooden buildings in various states of repair. There was a general store, a saloon, a small hotel, a livery stable, and a few other businesses, along with scattered houses on the outskirts. Kip led them to the general store first, where the proprietor, a balding man with spectacles perched on his nose, greeted them with familiarity. "Zimmerman, didn't expect to see you for another week at least." The man's gaze shifted to Cassandra, curiosity evident in his expression. "And who might this lady be?" "Tom, this is Miss Cassandra Moore. She's passing through," Kip replied, his tone discouraging further questions. "Miss Moore, Tom Harkins runs the mercantile and serves as our postmaster." After collecting the supplies they needed, Kip suggested they visit the hotel so Cassandra could inquire about accommodations. The Sweetwater Hotel was a 2-story wooden structure that had seen better days, but it appeared clean enough from the outside. The lobby was small but tidy, with worn carpet and faded wallpaper. A stern-faced woman sat behind the desk, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked up as they entered, her eyebrows rising slightly at the sight of Cassandra. "Mrs. Peterson, this is Miss Moore," Kip said by way of introduction. "She's looking for lodging while she seeks employment in town." The woman assessed Cassandra with a critical eye. Rooms $2 a week, payable in advance. No gentlemen callers in the rooms, no excessive noise, and no trouble of any kind. I run a respectable establishment. Before Cassandra could respond, the door to the hotel opened and a well-dressed man entered. He was in his 50s, portly with a neat beard and an air of authority. His eyes lit up at the sight of Kip. Zimmerman, just the man I wanted to see. He approached their group, then noticed Cassandra. And who might this lovely lady be? Kip's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Mayor Whitcomb, this is Miss Cassandra Moore. Miss Moore, Mayor Henry Whitcomb. The mayor took Cassandra's hand, holding it a moment longer than was strictly proper. A pleasure, Miss Moore. We don't often have such elegant new arrivals in our little town. Miss Moore is seeking employment, Kip said, his tone neutral, but his eyes watchful. The mayor's face brightened. Is that so? What a fortunate coincidence. I've been looking for someone to teach at our new school. The town council approved funds for a teacher just last month. Cassandra couldn't hide her surprise or her interest. A teaching position? Here in Sweetwater? Indeed. We've converted an old storage building into a schoolroom. Nothing fancy, mind you, but sufficient for our needs. We have about 15 children of school age in and around town. The mayor beamed at her. Might you be interested? I would certainly like to learn more about the position, Cassandra replied cautiously. Excellent. Why don't you join me for lunch at the hotel restaurant, and we can discuss the details. The mayor glanced at Kip and Lizzie. You're welcome to join us, of course, Zimmerman. Kip shook his head. We have errands to finish, but thank you for the offer, Mayor. As they stepped away to allow Cassandra to speak with the mayor, Lizzie looked up at her with undisguised dismay. Does this mean you'll be staying in town, Miss Moore? You won't be coming back with us? The question tugged at Cassandra's heart more than she expected. I need to at least hear what the mayor has to say about the teaching position, Lizzie. It's the kind of opportunity I've been hoping to find. The girl's face fell, but she nodded bravely. I understand. You need a job. Kip placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. We should let Miss Moore tend to her business, Lizzie. She has her own life to consider. To Cassandra, he added, We'll be at the livery stable when you're finished. No rush. As they walked away, Cassandra felt an unexpected pang of regret. In just 2 days, she had grown fond of the solemn child and her taciturn father. But she quickly pushed the feeling aside. This teaching position was exactly what she had been looking for, a chance to use her skills, to build a new life for herself. Lunch with Mayor Whitcomb was informative, if somewhat uncomfortable. The man clearly enjoyed the sound of his own voice, expounding at length about the town's growth and his own role in its development. The teaching position itself sounded promising a decent salary by frontier standards, housing included in the form of a small room attached to the schoolhouse, and relative autonomy in terms of curriculum. Of course, we'd need you to start right away, the mayor explained. The children have been without formal education for too long already. Cassandra nodded. I understand. When might I see the schoolhouse? This very afternoon, if you wish. The mayor signaled for the check. I have a meeting shortly, but I can have my assistant show you the facilities. By mid-afternoon, Cassandra had toured the schoolhouse, small but serviceable, met with the mayor's assistant to discuss particulars, and provisionally accepted the position. She would begin the following Monday, giving her a few days to settle in and prepare. With these arrangements made, she headed to the livery stable to find Kip and Lizzie. They were just finishing loading their supplies into saddlebags when she arrived. How did your meeting go? Kip asked, his tone carefully neutral. Quite well, Cassandra replied. I've accepted a position as the town's schoolteacher, starting next week. Lizzie's face brightened momentarily, then fell again. So, you'll be staying in town then? Yes, I'll be living in a small room attached to the schoolhouse. Cassandra knelt to the child's level. But perhaps you could visit sometime when you come to town with your father. Before Lizzie could respond, Kip interrupted. We should head back if we want to reach home before dark. His voice was gruff, his expression unreadable. Will you be staying at the hotel until the schoolroom is ready? That's the plan, yes. Cassandra straightened, suddenly aware of a tension between them that hadn't been there before. Kip nodded curtly. Then I suppose this is goodbye, Miss Moore. We appreciate your company these past days." The formality stung more than Cassandra expected. "I appreciate your hospitality, Mr. Zimmerman. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't taken me in." "Someone else would have helped you," he replied, avoiding her gaze as he tightened his horse's girth. "Folks out here tend to look after travelers." They parted with awkward farewells, Lizzie giving Cassandra a quick, fierce hug before mounting up behind her father. As Cassandra watched them ride away, she felt oddly bereft, as though she were losing something precious that she had only just discovered. The next few days passed in a blur of activity as Cassandra settled into her new life in Sweetwater Creek. The hotel room was small but clean, the townspeople curious but generally welcoming. She spent her time preparing lessons, organizing the schoolroom, and meeting the families whose children would be her students. But each night, as she lay in her narrow bed at the hotel, her thoughts drifted back to the Zimmerman homestead, to Lizzie's eager questions, to the peaceful rhythm of life there, to Kip's rare but rewarding smiles. On Saturday afternoon, as Cassandra was arranging books on the shelves of the schoolroom, the door creaked open. She turned, expecting to see the mayor's assistant with more supplies, only to find Kip Zimmerman standing in the doorway, hat in hand. "Mr. Zimmerman!" she exclaimed, unable to hide her surprise or her pleasure at seeing him. "What brings you to town today?" He shifted uncomfortably, turning his hat in his hands. "Thought I should check on your progress with the schoolroom. Lizzie will be attending after all." Cassandra blinked in confusion. "Lizzie? But you live miles from town." "About that." Kip took a step into the room, his expression serious. "I've been thinking, Lizzie needs proper schooling, more than I can give her at home. And with winter coming," he hesitated, "I've arranged for her to board with Tom Harkins and his wife during the week. They've got a spare room, and Mrs. Harkins is a good woman." "I see." Cassandra tried to process this information. "That's very thoughtful of you, putting her education first." "It's what her mother would have wanted." Kip glanced around the schoolroom, taking in the neat rows of desks, the blackboard, the books Cassandra had arranged. "Looks like you're settling in well." "Yes, though there's still much to do before Monday." Cassandra hesitated, then asked the question that had been nagging at her. "And how are you, managing alone at the homestead?" A flicker of something vulnerability perhaps crossed his face before his expression settled back into its usual stoic lines. "It's quiet without Lizzie's chatter." They stood in awkward silence for a moment before Kip cleared his throat. "Actually, there was another reason I came to town today." He met her eyes directly. "I wanted to ask if you'd join us for supper at the hotel restaurant, as a proper thank you for your help with Lizzie, and to wish you well with your new position." The invitation surprised and pleased her. "I'd like that very much, thank you." Supper that evening was more enjoyable than Cassandra had anticipated. Away from the homestead, in the relative formality of the hotel restaurant, Kip seemed both less comfortable and more attentive. He had clearly made an effort with his appearance, wearing a clean shirt and having trimmed his beard. Lizzie, too, was on her best behavior, wearing a dress that looked freshly pressed. As they ate, the conversation flowed more easily than Cassandra expected. Kip asked intelligent questions about her plans for the school, while Lizzie bubbled with excitement about being one of Miss Moore's students. "Pa says I can come home on weekends if the weather's good," Lizzie explained, "and he'll visit during the week when he can." "I'm sure you'll be the brightest student in the class," Cassandra told her with a smile. "You already have a head start on your reading." As the meal drew to a close, Lizzie excused herself to speak with Mrs. Harkins, who was dining at another table, leaving Cassandra and Kip alone. "Thank you for supper," Cassandra said into the sudden silence between them. "It was lovely." Kip nodded, his eyes on his coffee cup. "Cassandra, He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "These past days, having you at the homestead, it reminded me of what it's like to have a family, a complete one. I mean," her heart quickened at his admission. "Kip, please let me finish," he interrupted gently. "I know you've just arrived in Sweetwater, that you're starting a new life here, and I'm not asking for anything. But I want you to know that if you ever find yourself wanting something different, a life outside of town, perhaps, well, Lizzie and I would welcome you." Cassandra stared at him, stunned by the implication of his words. "Are you suggesting—" A faint flush colored his tanned cheeks. "I'm not proposing marriage to a woman I've known less than a week, if that's what you're thinking. That would be foolishness on both our parts." He met her eyes steadily. "But I am suggesting that there might be something worth exploring between us, if you're willing." The honesty of his words touched her deeply. "I think," she said carefully, "that I would very much like to explore that possibility." A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his rugged features. "Then perhaps you'd permit me to call on you properly, here in town?" "I would like that very much," Cassandra replied, feeling a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee she was drinking. When Lizzie returned to the table, she looked between the two adults curiously. "Why are you both smiling like that?" Kip chuckled, a rich sound that Cassandra realized she had rarely heard from him. "Because, little miss, I've just asked Miss Moore if I might come visit her in town sometimes, and she's agreed." Lizzie's eyes widened with delight. "Really? You'll be courting, like in the stories?" "Elizabeth," Kip admonished, though his tone held more embarrassment than censure. Cassandra laughed softly. "We're going to get to know each other better, Lizzie. That's all for now." But as they walked back to the hotel together, Lizzie skipping ahead, Kip reached for Cassandra's hand and squeezed it gently. The simple gesture held a promise that made her heart soar with possibilities she hadn't dared to imagine when she first arrived in Nebraska Territory. The following months saw Cassandra settling into her role as Sweetwater Creek's schoolteacher. The work was challenging but rewarding, the children eager to learn despite their varied backgrounds and abilities. Lizzie, as predicted, proved to be an excellent student, her natural intelligence flourishing under structured education. True to his word, Kip called on Cassandra regularly. At first, his visits coincided with his trips to town for supplies or to see Lizzie. They would share meals at the hotel restaurant, take walks along the creek that gave the town its name, or simply sit on the schoolhouse porch talking as the sun set. As autumn gave way to winter, their relationship deepened. Cassandra discovered the man beneath Kip's stoic exterior, thoughtful, principled, with an unexpected dry humor that surfaced when he was truly comfortable. He, in turn, came to admire her resilience, her patience with the town's children, her adaptability to frontier life. By Christmas, Kip was making the journey to town twice a week, regardless of weather or ranch responsibilities. The townspeople noticed, of course, in a place as small as Sweetwater Creek, nothing remained private for long, but the general reaction was positive. The schoolteacher and the rancher made a good match, people agreed, and everyone could see how good Miss Moore was for little Lizzie Zimmerman. It was on a crisp January evening, with snow blanketing the prairie and stars brilliant in the clear night sky, that Kip finally asked the question that had been on his mind for months. They were sitting before the fire in the small living area attached to the schoolroom, Lizzie asleep in the bedroom after an afternoon of sledding and snowman building. "Cassandra," Kip began, taking her hand in his. "I'm not a man of fancy words or grand gestures, but these past months have been the happiest I've known since losing Jenny. You've brought light back into my life, into Lizzie's life." He took a deep breath. "I love you, and if you'll have me, I'd be honored to call you my wife." Tears welled in Cassandra's eyes. "Oh, Kip." She squeezed his hand. "When I came west, I was running away from my past, looking for somewhere to hide. I never expected to find a future, a family, but that's exactly what you and Lizzie have become to me." "Is that a yes?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. She smiled through her tears. "Yes. 1,000 times. Yes." They were married in the spring, with the prairie bursting into bloom around them. The ceremony was held at the Zimmerman homestead, which had been transformed for the occasion with wildflowers and ribbons. The entire town turned out to witness the union of their schoolteacher and the respected rancher. Lizzie, radiant in a new dress sewn by Mrs. Harkins, stood proudly beside them as Cassandra and Kip exchanged their vows. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the little girl was the first to embrace Cassandra. "Does this mean I can call you Ma now?" she whispered. Cassandra knelt to meet the child's eyes. "If that's what you'd like, I would be honored. But I want you to know that I'm not trying to replace your mother. She'll always be your first Ma, and always in your heart." Lizzie nodded solemnly. "I know. But Pa says there's always room in a heart for more love, not less. "Your pa is a very wise man," Cassandra replied, pulling the child into a tight embrace. That night, after the celebrations had ended and the guests had departed, Kip found his new wife standing on the porch, gazing at the star-filled sky. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, slipping his arm around her waist. Cassandra leaned into his embrace. "Not a single one. I was just thinking about how far I've come, not just the distance from Boston, but in finding where I truly belong." "And where is that, Mrs. Zimmerman?" he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. She turned in his arms to face him, her eyes shining with happiness. "Right here, with you and Lizzie. Home." As the years passed, the Zimmerman homestead flourished under Cassandra's care. She continued teaching, riding into town each day when weather permitted, with Lizzie beside her until the girl was old enough to help her father with the ranch work. The little family grew first with the arrival of a son they named James, after Kip's father, and later a daughter they called Jenny in honor of the woman whose memory they kept alive through stories and small traditions. Cassandra often thought about the strange turns of fate that had brought her west, how a false accusation and a lame horse had led her to the life she was meant to live. The stranger who had never planned to stay long had found not just shelter, but love, family, and a place to call her own. And in the quiet moments when the children were asleep and the prairie night wrapped around their home like a blanket, Cassandra would look at Kip, his face weathered by sun and wind, his eyes still keen and loving, and know with certainty that some journeys led exactly where they were supposed to, even when the destination was the last place one expected to find home.